Alright guys, sorry, kind of ADDing all over the place here because I got to take care of a bunch of my vehicles kind of all at once, unfortunately. Right now I'm working on my Kia Spectra. It's an '07 Kia Spectra EX with the 2 liter. Um, the problem is that when I pulled it all off to replace the valve stem seals, I didn't lap the valves as properly as I should have because I was trying to be a little bit quick about it. Um, you know what? There's no substitute for doing something by hand. There were people that are like, oh, you just, throw the valve in there, put the compound on it, put a little hose on it, attach it to a drill, and there you go. You're good, you got. The one thing that does not do is does not apply downward pressure on the valve to the seat, which actually is what's cutting, not really the circular motion of it, more the. Now, probably what you could do is lube up your fingertip and then push against the valve and do it. But I just kind of got quick with it and was not the best way to do it. So I'm going to pull it back off and do it by hand. But I have on here the new actual cam chain and tensioner, like factory. That is the part number for that. It is a complete set that it comes with. I believe this is the chain. This is the tensioner, and then this is a guide plate, I think, on that. Cool. All right, I'm gonna get to that. I've already got to the point where the head is completely off, so take a look. Now, the thing with this is removing pretty much all of this nonsense and everything that's attached to the back of the cylinder and the head and everything, and then getting down here. I still yet have got to unbolt this and then the fuel rail, which is right here. And those are the last things. I've already gotten all this disconnected down here. You have to support it and take this off to be able to get the tensioner and all that all off. I'm not worried about it now, and I'll pull all this stuff back apart down here and then get the guides off to do the actual timing marks, make sure everything is dead set when it goes back on. But the problem that I was also having, and this is bizarre, is that I don't know whether or not this chain is done like pressure, like oil pressure, because right here there's a pedestal that goes up, and this is just like nothing like that. That's not good, especially for a cold start. Like this thing, when I first pulled this off, it was like that. And I had replaced this, but apparently I didn't do it with an actual factory part. I did it with an aftermarket part, and I don't remember what it was, but I'm going back factory completely. And the one thing that's kind of cool about this is, if you look at the factory chain, it has 2 gold links, much like Hondas do. If you look, I don't know how well that's going to come out on my phone, but there's like some writing on here on 2 of these links, and this one is right here. If you get up under it, try to get in there and look, there is a dot on the actual cam gear itself. I don't know how well this is coming out. I hope it's coming out okay. And there's also a corresponding one on this side too. That's where those 2 gold links are actually going to line up, is right on those dots. So I'm going to get this off and check out and like lapping these valves. All right, so now that I got the actual head off, I was looking at it and I started to see if I can get a better shot in here. There should be a little dot right there on that gear. The gold link will sit on that, and this little line that's right here lines right up with that link, and that's where the other one is. And I counted them over, and it's exactly 7 from that dot over to this. So that is the timing marks for that. When doing this, I had low compression on cylinder 1, and there was a little bit of like coolant residue in here. And then when I pulled the actual head off, the piston had a little bit of coolant residue. Now the thing that I find odd is I purposely did not put coolant back in this when I went to start it, because just in case I had to pull all this back apart, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't having to deal with all that again. But it still had coolant in there. And I looked at the head gasket, and this is it right here. And there's a little bit of kind of wear here and up here, but on the block side is weird. There's like pitting in between from like this to this. There's a lot of pitting. that I've tried cleaning up and hitting with like a razor blade and scraping it off without gouging as much as possible. And then I tried hitting it with like, what was it, gray Scotch Brite, like the finest Scotch Brite that I can get. But the problem is like, here's the block side. Can't really see any. There's just a, I don't know, it's kind of hard to see, but there's like nothing visible like normally when there's a blowout. But usually when it's a blowout with the heat cycle, like if the car was running and everything's fine, this would blow this material off, and it didn't really do that. So I'm thinking quite possibly that it is just that pitting might be slipping under there under pressure. The only thing I can think is I'm not going to reuse this, even though it still is really it doesn't have a heat cycle on it or anything. I'm not going to reuse it just because of that. I'm going to relap the valves best I can. I'm actually going to do because I don't have any like a vacuum tester to check the, make sure that it's all sealed up. But I'm going to do the poor man's way of doing it, where you basically just put fluid in the combustion chamber side, like flip the head upside down and put, I'm probably going to use rubbing alcohol, like 90% isopropyl, it's a terrible word, isopropyl alcohol in there, and let it see if it drains out. And that's like one of the best ways of doing it, because of liquid, and that's a very fine liquid, it's actually not as dense as water, and that's why it's kind of a little bit better to use that, because it'll find any way that it can get through, and you'll just check the chambers and see if there's any fluid leaking through, and that's kind of the best way to double check your work. And I should have done that to begin with, but you learn your lesson as you do things. But really, all in all, it's not that hard to do this. But I'm just gonna pull everything off, all the rails off, pull the cams off. Now that I know that the cams have the marks themselves, the timing marks, so I'm not worried about pulling all that apart and line it up on a table separate, and then take the intake manifold off as well. All right, let's do all that, and then get back to the chamber side. Okay, so I got it all set up here. I've got the isopropyl alcohol in them. I will point out cylinder 1 and 4 kind of had, 1 was the worst. It also had the lowest compression. It was like 160. 2, 3, and 4 was, strangely enough, was at 180, 185. Within that range, like 182 or so, which is a decent compression. And I'm wondering if you can see, it's like brighter here. I hit it with that Scotch Brite, and then over on this side, because there was a bunch of corrosion all built up like in between here, and I'm betting money that was what was seeping through. I did check it with my tool. Let me grab that. It's this OEM tools, like it's a straight edge bar, and I laid it across this way, and I laid it across this way, and straight, and scraped it forward and backward and sideways and everything. And I also used the feeler gauge, so it is within tolerance. It's not warped. The block or the deck is not warped, but I'm betting money that it was that little bit of corrosion that was in there. It's right next to coolant jackets. See, at this side it shows it too, like in between there and right up in there, it had corrosion on it. So I'm betting money that that's what it was. But right now, as I'm checking, all my intake ports are actually decent. Let me hop over to the other side real quick. Like, and as we can see that water in there. Let me see if I can get a flashlight. Okay, so yeah, you can see it in there pretty good. Like, it's super wet in there. That one is dry. That one is dry. And that's cylinder 1. Boy howdy. Yeah, she was leaking pretty bad. So I'm gonna get up in there and probably clean out the seat and then lap those, just the exhaust seats on those, because all the other ones are perfectly fine. So I'm not gonna mess with something that's not needed. So yeah, there we go. That's kind of a good process of elimination to let you see where your mistakes are. All right, I'm gonna take this apart and see what I can do. All right, guys, so it's been a couple of days. Actually, I think it's been about a week or so because I've had other obligations taken care of. But I'm back here. I went ahead and took the head in to have it decked, just because I was more worried about like the corrosion that was built up in there, and didn't want to have to do this for a third time. And I'll tell you this: looking at this, I don't know how well that this can come out. Let's see if I can pivot this over. How close that is. This is one decking, like one service. Like I seriously don't think it can go any more than this because of how close that is into the valve seats. Like that is it. And like it was close to begin with. I mean, looking at it, you might be able to get a couple more, but man, is it ever so very close. And then the pistons themselves have recesses or reliefs for the valves. Sorry about that. Had a freaking fly flying around my feet and everything. So definitely everyone that's done this knows this, but I'm just trying to let other people know. If ever you take a machine and get any heads, surfaces decked or anything, you really want to take and clean it. Because see, metal shavings everywhere. They were supposed to have hot tanked this when I picked it up, but their machine was broken, so the duty now falls on me to get this done. So really, like all passages that you can, just try to clean out. I'm gonna have to take this off and this out because there's a little hole down in there. You really want to try to get every little passage that you possibly can. And the sad thing is, and I tried to tell them that I wanted it cleaned and decked, or I wanted it cleaned before they decked it, was because I didn't want all this hard carbon and oil that would trap all of these shavings. I wanted it to be where you literally could blow it out with air, but they didn't want to do that. So like there's a whole bunch of metal shavings down there. Oh, isn't that just fantastic? All right down in there. So yeah, there's some down in there and inside the actual valve guide. So you really need to do that. And that's what I'm about to do right now. Hooray! Just kind of wanted to show you this is the major reason why you clean. Because I started to go back through with my air tool and then just blowing through all the passages, like the coolant passages, just everywhere. Everywhere there's a hole in here, I'm blowing through it, even the valve guides and stuff. So as I'm like, I start in one end and just keep going like up and up and up and up and over and over and over. And then as I'm getting closer to this end, it is just dumping out shavings. There's a big old spiral there. There's a whole bunch over here. So that is very important. See if I can get it to do it real quick. So it's kind of coming out that port right there. Sorry if it's really loud, I apologize. Yeah, there's a bunch dumping out right there. Just kind of go through and just keep spraying because it's very important. And then not only, because right now I'm only using air, I will go back with brake clean and also spray solvent in there and try to clean it out with like brushes. Big tools that I used when cleaning this, especially ports, is this little tool that you can pick up at Walmart. Is the pipe, like a bottle brush, and just shoving it in the ports, you know, like getting it up in there, and then with degreaser, spraying all that out. So it looks way better than it did. I don't know how well that comes out. It's not coming out too good on my phone. But yeah, it helps, especially down in those exhaust ports. Let me see if I can get a flashlight. All right, much better. So you can get down there and see all the ports. More importantly, the valve seats. And I can see, oh yeah, the LED lights goofing with the camera on my phone. But yeah, you can see like how clean the ports are. It helps a lot. So I'm gonna go through and just keep cleaning it with air and then solvents and stuff. And once I do that, then it's gonna be lapping all the valves. But I gotta wire wheel the exhaust valves. All the intake valves are good. They're still clean. I gotta get all that corrosion off of those exhaust valves. All right, be back in a minute. All right, so again, I had to kind of stop because I needed to order valve stem seals, which I thought I had ordered, but I ended up ordering them for a different engine. So now that I have those, I can go ahead and continue this. And I want to correct something that I had said earlier in the video, was that I was only going to lap the seats that I needed to. No. Go ahead and just do them all. That way to rule out any kind of future possibility. But I wanted to show on here. Let's see how well this will come out. But if you look, you see, man, that is really not gonna want to focus on that, is it? There's that gray band on the valve seat. Yeah, there we go. You can kind of see it a little bit better there. There's like a gray band. That's where the lapping came across. And you can see in here, get a little poker. That right there, that little band that goes all the way across there, that shows that that's where that seat has been lapped into. That's should be the 45-degree angle. But it's smooth like all the way across. There's no pitting, there's nothing, no obstructions or anything on there, so that should be pretty good now. Yeah, and I apologize, I'm using my phone, which that's the only thing I've got at the moment. Well, period, because I can't afford $500, $700 cameras. But yeah, it's nice all the way across, and I've done all the exhausts. It was once I had done that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start assembling, and I'm like, shit, I don't have valve stem seals. So now that I've got those, I'm gonna go ahead and lap in the intake. Something I kind of wanted to point out in here, I don't know how well this is gonna show up because just lighting and in general and stuff, but there is a pretty decent 3-angle valve job on here. Let's see, like this is where the actual valve pocket is, I guess you would say. The valve seat pocket was cut out to put in the actual seat, but there's like first, second, third, and if you, I don't know how well this is coming out. Hold on a second. Yeah, trying to get better lighting in here, but it's just not working. It's nice and lit up in here, but just this phone doesn't want to focus very well close up like this. But yeah, the pocket, the first angle, second angle, which would be the 45, and then the third angle, which probably is like a 60 or 65. But then if you see, they cut down into the pocket too, to smooth out where the actual seat sits in there. So you want to say technically you have a 4-angle valve job, but no, yeah, but it looks good for Hyundai and Kia. I'm impressed myself. And another thing, let's see how well this comes out. I'm sorry, I apologize. Yeah, well, this isn't really wanting to focus very much. I wanted to point out that technically they do back cut factory. They back cut these intake valves. Right there on that edge where the 45 would sit flush, right above it, there's this tiny little like back cut that they basically knock off that lip, which does help with flow. You'd be amazed at how much just taking that little hard edge off will do. So I was impressed by that. It's not typically something that you would think that, especially Kia or a Hyundai manufacturer for a passenger car would have thought to do, but technically this motor does It's also found in the Tiburon, so the 2 liter Tiburons. So it's kind of cool. Okay, so I'm going to start putting the valve seals on and then reassembling that exhaust side. Something that like kind of a trick I always do is like just kind of go through, just clean off any excess oil that's sitting on top. You kind of want that dry so that the seal gets a nice seat. And then what I like to do is I'll take one of the seals, set it down there. Take pliers, especially since it's weighing down, you can't really like get your hand down in there. You go down, and I just kind of just set it on it, like don't push it in. And then I'll use, like this one ended up being a 10. Usually it's an 11 mil, but so what I do is I'll take this and I'll put it on the actual valve seal, and I try to get it as parallel, like as straight up and down as possible, and just push down. You don't have to really shove it or anything. You'll push and you'll feel a little like a seat down, and you want to try to get it as straight as possible, because with that seal needs to ride along the shaft of the valve, which will actually keep it sealed. And if it's cocked or at an angle, you're gonna let a lot of like oil pass, and it's gonna be kind of smoky and run like crap. So when I do that, I'll put all those in real quick, and then we'll come back and I'll show you like how the valve should slide up in there. And what I meant about like having that sit on there is, if you notice how this sits, it covers all the way across, but the actual socket is sitting on the edge of that lip. You don't want it inside of it because that can damage the seal itself. So you want it riding right on that outside, so it's like flush with it. Like I said, usually like with Hondas, it's always been an 11 mil, but with this, it was a 10 mil. So, and a 10 mil deep socket. All right, so I've got the valve, sitting here. What I do to just double check, and I don't know how well this is gonna show up on this stupid phone, is like I just slide it up, and as you can see, it's coming up, and it makes a nice seal all the way across. And a lot of people are like, oh, you should use the little tube thing that goes over it to protect it from damaging it. It's like, man, as long as you're not being dumb and just shoving it up in there like, gorilla hands over here, it's like it's not going to damage the seal. Like, these things are meant for some pretty intense heats and tolerances and stuff. So, but enough of that rant. But yeah, it seats and it seals nice all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and load these up, and then I'll show you how I assemble the springs and keepers and stuff. Sorry, it was something I meant to say on there, is make sure that you do oil your valves before you slide them up in there. You can see the little blobs of oil across the top of them. Yeah, so just make sure that that you do that, and slowly push it through the seal and make sure she seals up real good, and you should be good. Oh yes, and make sure that your seats are in first before you do this. But luckily, my actual seats are wider than that, so they actually sit down over that secondary groove that's down in there, not right off the valve seat. A lot of Hondas sit right off the valve guide. They are very problematic. So that was the trick to remember on that. But thank God, like I said, mine will slip right over. Matter of fact, let me show you real quick. Bloop. And like that, she's seated. Yay! Okay, so I did want to point this out. There is a specific orientation for the spring when you're putting it in, and it's always like the bunched up coils are at the bottom because that's where your coil bind is going to happen. So the spring works downward like that. So pay attention to that when installing these. You don't want to install it upside down. As far as I'm not really. I've never done it myself, so I don't know what exactly could happen. I mean, because springs work one way, they just collapse is all they do. So it could work fine, but it's always good practice to make sure you install them the right way. And so what I do is I have this tool right here, which is right there. Lyle, and the tool number is 36050, which is a 2-pack for larger engines and then smaller engines. And how this works is a hell of a lot easier than dorking around with the compressors and all the other nonsense and stuff that takes so much time. So on here, like, I clean the springs and the seats, or the retainers and everything, and I put them in there, and then I install the keepers in there. And so I just put a rag up underneath to fill the chamber side, because this, you don't want this to flex and push down, which it will. That's why you kind of need to pack it in. So once that's in there, I kind of seat it, and I just push it down so that way that those won't like flop or come out. And then when you take this tool with that piece, because that slides out, that's when you take this out and you use this to bang it out, that pulls the keepers out and then releases the spring. But to install, you put this tool back in, which I believe is still magnetic, this tip is, and you do this upside down. You'll put it on there like that, and then all you do is you just take and hit it with I have like a little 3-pound to 5-pound hand sledge. You give it a whack and it'll seat. But you need to be mindful, sometimes it has binded. Just give it another whack again and it'll seat. So I'm not going to be able to show you. Actually, hold on, I might be able to. Just one second. I do believe that's in place. Hand sledge. Push it down. There you go. Come on now. Come on now. And like that, which is good. That saves a lot of time and hassle. Just as a future reference, it's a great tool. I know there might be some cars that it doesn't really want to play nice with, but they're very far from few, because I've done this from Hondas to Fords to Chevys to like anything that I've had to work on. And this is for a Kia, and I've even done it on a Miata cylinder head, so it still works. All right. Okay, so it's been a minute. Sorry, just trying to get all this dang gum work done. So got chains lined up. Everything's good. New tensioners in there. Lubed everything up. Got everything all back down and bolted down. It's good. Now it's time to do the head bolts. And what's dumb about this build or this design is it's like these, and these all have the same bolts, except these two are different. I don't know why. It's dumb. Like I was saying, that these have different bolts, so these are the two on those ends, the rest of those are that. And this is a Felpro set, which is Federal Mogul, which is still, I believe, MAHLE, M-A-H-L-E. It's still the same corporation, if I'm not mistaken. And I could be mistaken and somebody will call that out. That's fine. but these are different. They're like Federal Mogul. These are actually pretty decent brand. They're still torque to yield bolts, which is greatly annoying because they're pretty much one-time use, and that's what sucks. But luckily, they're only like 20-30 bucks for the set, so they're not very expensive. The tools that you'll need, like I said, are these. I got these off of Amazon. I think the whole set was like 50 bucks, but definitely worth it because you'll never get down in there if you don't have these extended ones. So try to get to it. So something to mention is that these bolt holes will be like, once you put a little oil on the tip down here where the threads are at, you need to put a little bit of oil up here on the, the washer. These will be drop-in. These back here will not, because of these little pieces right here. So when you go to do that, the best thing that I've found to do is to kind of get the bolt like down there a little, drop the washer, slide it under, and there you go. And then you can drop the bolt in. Okay, so when doing this, you can look this information up online. Like the smaller bolts will be 20 foot-pounds, and then the bigger bolts are 23 foot-pounds. When you do that in the torque sequence, you start from the middle and work your way out. It gets really annoying switching back and forth on those, the large bit and then the small bit. But once you get to that, then it tells you to do a degree, like a 60 to 65 degree pass through that pattern, and then another 60 to 65 degree pass in that pattern. This is a protractor tool that I got picked up because everything else was kind of really cumbersome and stupid, and cheap. But this was like 10 bucks and worth its weight in gold, because you have to do, see if I set this up, go on there, should show you. This camera does not like focusing up close. Like, that's a 65 degree. So that is where you would put your torque bar on there and then pull to meet this one. And finally, after this is like the second or third time doing this, it finally felt nice and tight, like it should have been. The first two times, I don't know what it was, either just weak bolts or what the deal was, but it would not tighten up, and it annoyed the bejeebus out of me. But this was a very valuable tool to have on that, because now it's nice and tight. But now I'm going to try to get everything back together. Okay, so I've got the last little bits and bobs buttoned up here. All this is done, motor mount, the tensioner, all that. Just got to put the intake on. I'm going to pull one of the fuses for the fuel pump and try to pressurize the oil, because that timing chain tensioner in there, it is pressure driven, like oil pressure driven. So once that comes up and then all the lifters fill in and everything, it shouldn't click or clack or anything anymore. So we'll see here in a minute. All right, she is running. Everything's going good. No massive loud knocks or bangs or anything. Kind of already bled the coolant. Nice and not firm. It's not pressurized, or like over pressurized, I should say. There is still always slight pressure in there. But yeah, she's running good. Coolant staying good. Right there. What is that? 750 RPM. Not bad. Yeah, my TPS and stuff is on because my sensors are all dead. And then of course the airbag light is because that seat sensor is faulty. It always fails, and I gotta see if Kia will still get. There's supposed to be a recall on that. And they told me it was back ordered, and so I need to follow up back on that. But other than that, we're golden.